Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us here tonight. I'm Whitney Ward.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Mark Hanrahan.
Well, a heat advisory is now in effect for Spokane and the surrounding areas. These rising temperatures with a lack of rain exasperating the unprecedented dry conditions.
So the drought map right here on your screen shows that most of eastern Washington, including Spokane, is in the red zone, which is an extreme drought. These dry temperatures have only added to the extreme risk of wildfires all across the region.
So we want to go straight to meteorologist Thomas Patrick to explain kind of what this combination of these high temperatures and drought conditions really do mean for us here in the inland Northwest. Thomas?
Yeah, and this is going to be something that we're going to talk about not just today, not just this week, but perhaps all summer, because this is very much a long-term issue for the inland Northwest. Here's that same map that you just saw. The red area, extreme drought conditions, most of southern and eastern Washington, covering 35% of the state. But I think you'll find this interesting. Let's compare where we're at now versus the same time in 2015, because that was also a very hot and dry summer for us. And what I found interesting was that at approximately the same week, the first week of July in 2015, none of the state was under an extreme drought. Actually didn't kick in until the last week of July. So we actually had that extreme drought first appear in the state 2 months earlier than when we did back in 2015. Hence that we moved into these hotter and drier conditions than normal. And of course, our rain deficit shows that as well. We're 5.5 inches below normal rainfall since the start of February. And that is the record driest for that entire stretch in Spokane. And again, more red area that you see here, record dry conditions since the start of February for most of the regions, especially eastern Washington, Spokane area. So of course, this is going to lead to hotter conditions, dry heat, hotter than the humid heat out eastward. It also is going to lead us to more fires as well. It looks like our fire season and even smoky season has started about a month ahead of schedule. But now for today's weather and those alerts that you saw, including the heat advisories and the air quality alerts, let's move over to Chief Meteorologist Tom Sherry back in the studio.
Yeah, we are talking about the heat continuing across the area. It's hot everywhere now. Once again, we have another heat advisory in effect. Everywhere you see shaded in orange, that's through Wednesday evening. We'll get briefly cooler weather on Thursday and Friday, but then it heats up again just in time for the weekend. Now, we do expect a few thunderstorms up along the Canadian border. So actually, that where you see shaded in green indicates where we could see a flash flood watch if we get some of that rain up there, that heavy rain. And of course, what Thomas was talking about, those fires burning in southeastern Washington and northeastern Oregon, you've got that poor air quality warning in effect. That's also in effect through Wednesday morning. So my gosh, it is just all around us, isn't it? 95 degrees, that's the current temperature. Keep in mind, we should only be in the low 80s right now. Winds are out of the north at 9 miles per hour. Day planner forecast calling for an overnight low of 63. Tuesday's high, almost 100 degrees. It's also going to become hazy on Tuesday. We don't think the smoke will make the air quality unhealthful, but you will see that haze, and that will be due to the smoke. For the weekend, I've got cooler weather on Saturday, then we're back into the 90s again on Sunday. I'll check the rest of your 7-day forecast, all coming up in a few minutes.
Sounds good, Tom. Thank you very much. New rules aimed at protecting workers who are exposed to extreme heat take effect tomorrow. The Washington Department of Labor and Industries filed an emergency rule with steps that employers must take to prevent outdoor workers from suffering heat-related illness. KREM 2's Amanda Rowley joining us live now to break down what the new rules mean. Amanda?
Well, working in the direct sun in these extreme heat conditions is not only unbearable, but it can be dangerous, which is why Washington's new heat exposure rule identifies proactive steps as simple as providing shade for employees to cool down in. This rule comes as a relief to those who work outdoors.
Washington State's new outdoor heat exposure rule applies to people working in agriculture, construction, and other outdoor industries.
When it's that hot, it really does take a toll on you, even just walking around.
Rich Scara maintains the Spokane Conservation District's nursery. Most of his work is in the shade.
Especially back in that corner there right now. It's nice and the breeze is coming through.
Under the new regulations and depending on the outdoor temperature, employers must now ensure workers have a paid cool-down rest period. It has to be at least 10 minutes every 2 hours. They must also provide water and shade to cool down in.
Human resources is the most important resource, and you have to take care of your employees.
Rich carries this bottle with him everywhere and fills it with water 10 times or more every day.
After I'm done 20 ounces of coffee, it's 20 ounces of water all day.
Some employers told me today the new rules are common sense and already in practice. The Water Resources Division of the Spokane Conservation District employs several people who regularly work outdoors. They already train staff annually on heat safety.
It's just an opportunity for us to check in with our employees and make sure that they're comfortable with the situation.
Lindsay Chudis with the Conservation District says the shade component, though, may be a challenge for other industries to provide.
Confirming that they have a spot to take a break, I think, is the big shift, right? That's a big, difficult thing that not everybody across industries can do.
Nothing beats being inside in air conditioning, obviously, and that's another good thing about my job here is that I have it readily available. I can take a break and go inside.
And I can tell you, I saw him going in for some ice cold water in the building that he works next to pretty often, so staying hydrated out there. Now, Washington's outdoor heat exposure rule goes into effect tomorrow. And for more information on what your employer should be doing to protect you while you're working in the heat, just text us the word HEAT to 448-2000. Reporting in Spokane Valley, Amanda Rowley, KREM 2 News.
All right, Amanda, thank you very much. And how to handle the heat has also been a topic of debate between the Spokane City Council and the mayor recently. The mayor says the city's plan to provide cooling centers is sufficient. Several council members say it's not.
So tonight we know they will be voting on that ordinance that would require a broader, more detailed plan for the city. Our political reporter Casey Decker is joining us now live in the newsroom to kind of break it down. And Casey, people are wondering why this ordinance is so controversial to begin with.
Well, Whitney, Mark, part of why is that it originally dealt not only with cooling centers and warming centers, but also just with the city's wider homelessness response. And Mayor Nadine Woodward felt council was trying to push through major changes to the entire shelter system without getting enough public feedback first. So she called a meeting last week to gather some of that input. After tons of people weighed in, city council members did make some changes to the ordinance. Namely, they actually split it into two ordinances. One deals with only the emergency shelters like cooling centers, warming centers, and clean air centers for when it's smoky out. And the other ordinance would make broader changes to shelter policy. Now, that second one, it won't actually be voted on for at least a couple weeks, so we're just going to focus on the first one right now. Here are the main changes it would make to current policy. One, rather than requiring cooling centers only when Spokane has 3 straight days of 100+ degree weather, it would now be 2 days of 95 degree weather. Second, it requires that all warming and cooling center spaces be low barrier, meaning they can't require people to do things like attend a church service or pass a drug test. 3, it specifies that emergency shelter space needs to be enough to meet the need of all the vulnerable people in the city. And finally, it would require that the city maintain contracts year-round so that they're just ready to go when the extreme weather actually strikes. Now, like we mentioned, the mayor has argued that all of this would be unnecessary because not that many people showed up to the cooling centers. But at the meeting she called, some advocates pointed out that maybe that wasn't because of the lack of the need for spaces, but rather a lack of accessibility. Either people didn't know about the centers, they had trouble getting there, or they just didn't feel welcome. So City Council expected to vote on this proposal in their 6 p.m. meeting tonight. Whitney, Mark.
All right, Casey, thanks for the update tonight. Also tonight, a 7-mile stretch of the North Cascades Highway on State Route 20 is now closed, and that's so crews can work on wildfires in that area. This closure is located about 20 miles west of Winthrop. Fire there is causing the closure. It's called the Cedar Creek Fire right now, burning about 5 miles south of Mazama. It's burned about 75 acres so far, and if you are headed to the west side of the state, you won't be able to go that way. You'll have to use either I-90 or U.S. Highway 2.
Fire crews on the scene of a fire that broke out this afternoon near Spirit Lake. Firefighters are only letting some residents in and out of their homes near the Clagstone Cutoff as firefighters attack that fire from the ground and from the air. Our crew on the scene there says helicopters and super scoopers are dropping water on the fire. It's just small at this point, several acres, but crews are hoping to contain it and keep it small before it grows. Meantime, a shelter has been set up at the Blanchard Community Center.
And we are tracking the Burbank fire just south of Moses Lake. Right now, the westbound Sela Creek rest area is closed. Today, there are controlled burns. This is below the Fred G. Redmond Bridge. The right westbound lane is also closed. Authorities are now asking drivers just to be cautious of emergency vehicles in that area. Pay attention and please do not slow down or stop to take photos.
The Snake River Complex fire 20 miles south of Lewiston is now at 78,000 acres and is 0% contained. Additional crews have arrived to help help fight that fire, and a bulldozer and air crew are also working the fire as well. Evacuation orders are still in place for homes along the Snake River and for residents on Zaza Road north of Soldier Meadow and west of Waha Road, including Redbird and Waha Lake, as well as for residents of that Deer Creek area, the community of Forest, and north of Hoover Ridge. The Red Cross has a shelter set up at Echo Hills Church in Lewiston. In the middle of all this, authorities are now looking into reports of looting in the evacuation areas along the Snake River. Deputies are patrolling the area, and in a statement, the Nez Perce sheriff issued a warning to any potential looters. He wrote, quote, "If anyone dares to try to take advantage of this situation by stealing, let this be a warning to you. My deputies are good, and they will not leave any stone unturned to bring you to justice. We will find you." So if you see anything suspicious or suspicious vehicles in that area, deputies urge you to call 911 and let them know about it.
And progress has been made on the Asotin Complex fire. The Silcott fire now, which is one of the fires that's part of the complex, that's now been 100% contained. The Dry Gulch fire has now moved to 20% containment. So level 3 means go now. Those orders are still in place for residents on Asotin Creek Road west of the Cloverland Fork. Then there are level 2, which means get ready to go. Those are in place for Cloverland Road and streets off of Cloverland Road, as well as the Harlow Ridge area. Clarkston Heights, south of Piola Road and Critchfield Road intersections, all the way to Quail Ridge and Swallow's Nest Golf Course. Those are all at level 2. That fire has now burned over 50,000 acres. So far, it's burned at least 6 outbuildings.
We know this is a lot of information. If you'd like to know more about the wildfires burning all across the region, just text the word fire to 509-448-2000 and we'll send a link directly to your phone.
Well, there is a housing crisis in Spokane, and now there are bidding wars to buy homes here in the city. Coming up as part of our continued Boomtown coverage, we're breaking down the struggle to find a place to live in Spokane.